Hi, my name is Dan Ariely, and I'm the James B. Duke Professor of Psychology and Behavioral Economics. And I want to talk to you today a little bit about Kaima, a group that serves the public in Israel. I want to tell you a little bit about a general model for behavioral change, and I want to show you some results from experiments that we have done that try to bring about such change. But before I start, you might have noticed that I have half a beard, and you might have wondered what bet I lost. So I didn't lose any bet. Many years ago, I was badly burned, and most of my body is covered with scars, including the right side of my face. So I just have scars. It's almost symmetrical, but it's not. And I'm telling you this because somebody told me that unless I clarify it first thing, they keep on focusing on what's the point with this half a beard. There's no point. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about behavioral change. If you made a list of all the things that people don't do in the way you want them to do, and by people I also mean kids, there's lots of those things. Right? People in general, we don't take our medications, we don't exercise enough, we don't sleep enough, we spend too much time on screens, we text and drive. You could make a long, long list. And if you think about this gap, the gap between what we want people to do and what people actually do, the question is, what explains this gap and how do we narrow it down? And one thing you might say is maybe people just don't know. Maybe if we just told them, everything would be fine. For example, there's something called financial literacy. You might say people just don't know how to handle their money. Let's just tell them how to handle their money. And if people only knew how to handle their money, everything would be all right. Well, there are lots of people who believe this way, and there have been lots and lots of attempts for what is called financial literacy. In the US, we spend in total somewhere between $700 and $800 million a year trying to educate people about how to deal with their money. And there are short courses and long courses and different versions of it. And there were two studies of what is called a meta-analysis, trying to analyze all the studies ever to be conducted and seeing what's the impact, what's the improvement, what's the delta. Well, when you teach people something like financial literacy, the first question to ask is, do they remember what they learned? And the answer is yes. Great. Now the question is, do they act differently? And the first study to be conducted on this found that the improvement in what people actually do is 0.1%. It's a little higher immediately after the course, but then it goes down to 0.1%, basically close to nothing. Right? And this is because teaching something doesn't guarantee that people will remember, but even if people remember, and they do in this case, it doesn't guarantee action. I told you there were two studies on this. The first one showed that the improvement in spending, budgeting, things of that nature was 0.1%. The second one found it was 0.2%. So you can argue if it's 0.1 or 0.2, clearly very, very close to zero, no matter how you do it. So the point is that when we think about people, when we think about our kids, when we think about behavior, we often think that the only thing we need to do is to tell people how to do things differently. People would internalize it, and then things would work out. Sadly, there's very little evidence for this happening. In contrast, in social science, and particularly in behavioral economics, there's this idea that we need to change the environment. We don't need to change people, we need to change the environment. And we think about this in two ways. And think about changing behavior is like sending a rocket to space. When you send a rocket to space, you have two general tasks. The first one is to make the rocket as aerodynamic as possible, so to have the least resistance that it can be, so it will go with less interference. And the second is to put as much fuel as possible on it, to load it as much with energy so it can go the whole way. And behavioral change is the same thing. You first of all want to look at the behavior and you want to say, how do I reduce friction? How do I make the right behavior and the easy behavior more similar? And then you want to think, and how do I add motivation? So let's talk about those two things. Let's talk about friction and motivation. So first of all, friction. I told you that I'm part of a group called Kaima. Kaima is an organization for the public good, working with the Israeli government, trying to improve the life of the citizens in all kinds of ways. One of the projects we worked on was to try and get people to use less cash. Why? People don't pay taxes on all cash. It's not good for the economy, crime, terrorism, and so on. So we wanted to reduce cash. And we've done it in many ways, but one way we did it is to change the ATM interface. You go to an ATM and there are different buttons. The only thing we changed was the different buttons. For some people, the buttons were from a low number, 100 shekels, to a high number, 1,500 shekels. For some people, it was from a low number, 100 shekels, only up to 400 shekels. Now, in that case, you could press the button that says, give me another amount, and you could type it in. So it was possible, but it required a little bit more work. And then for some people, we took one button, the 200 shekels, and we pre-selected it. So if you pressed OK, you immediately took it. Other people had to press 200 or 400 or 1,000 and then press OK. So we basically changed very little in terms of friction. You needed to do less effort, less work. What happened? We reduced the amount of cash people took out by about half. Right? Small things, small amounts of friction reduce dramatically the amount that people took. Similarly, imagine that I looked at your refrigerator. My guess is that right now there would be some rotting fruits and vegetables in your refrigerator. Why? Because we open the refrigerator door, we look at eye level, the drawer with the fruits and vegetables is a little too far away, a little bit too much effort, we don't open it. You take the fruit and vegetables, you put them in eye level, people eat more fruit and vegetables. You take the unhealthy food, you put them in the drawer, people eat less unhealthy food. Small things that matter. Even about the chair I'm sitting now, I'm in my mother's kitchen. I have this chair, it's generally comfortable, and I have next to me this chair, not as comfortable, but when you sit on that chair, it forces you to sit up and use your muscles. Guess what? If at night I'm taking the uncomfortable chair and I put it in front of the computer, in the morning I show up and I use that chair. If I start the day with this more comfortable chair, I rarely move to this other one. Small things matter. Friction. And from this perspective, what I encourage you to do is I encourage you to think about your work environment, your kids' work environment. And can we do things to make the right behavior, maybe reading more, maybe having less screens, eating better, exercising more? Can we do all of those things, studying for longer sessions with less interruptions? Can we design the environment to have less interruptions? That's the first component. The second component, we said, was fuel. How to increase motivation. And there's lots of stories here to say, but I'll tell you one in which we did a study in Israel. And the study is that the Israeli government came to us and they said, look, there's this great class on computer science light. And we give it to kids toward the end of middle school, and then more kids study computer science in high school. And they said, would you please figure out how to digitize it? Because if it would be digitized, then more kids would do it, everything would be better off. So I said, fine, of course, sounds great. But I asked, did anybody ever test to make sure that this short course actually works? And they said, no, but it works. Okay, this is not what we do. So I said, I'll do it, but before I do it, I want to check that this course actually works. So Kaima is a group of social scientists, designer, computer scientists, and we basically go into topics, study them, figure out what to do, and then propose interventions for the government. So in this case, we were going to digitize the class, but before that, we said, let's study. So we studied that class. We had some students take the class, some in the control group, and what did we find? We find that for boys, there was no difference. The class improved nothing in terms of their desire to study computer science. And for girls, it was negative. After the class, they were less interested in studying computer science. And by the way, this class is the class that lots of people give, Facebook, Google. I mean, lots of people give a similar class, 6 weeks, computer science light. So we said, that's very odd. We're not sure that this is a very strange job. Let's do it again. So we did it again. We had a group of computer science light. We had a control group with neuroscience. We had another control group with nothing. Same result. Boys, no impact. Girls are less interested in computer science. But now we kind of expected that something strange is going to happen, so we did all kinds of other surveys and all kinds of other tests. And what did we find? The first question we had was, do girls at the end of this class think that are less capable? Self-efficacy. And the answer is no. The efficacy of girls increased, the efficacy of boys increased. They all feel more capable. But what did we find? That girls find it to be incredibly boring and potentially a meaningless career. You see, at that age, at the end of middle school, the boys, get to play with computers, and they're very happy. The 6 weeks of computer science light, what you get to do is to move a turtle on the screen. And the boy said, yay, that's great. You get to move a turtle on the screen, and maybe you get a job in doing that. The girl says, who wants to do that? We want something that has meaning. And at that age, girls want something that has more connection with reality, something they can see a future, maybe in later ages as well, but at this age for sure. So what did we do? We said the source of girls not going enough to computer science has nothing to do with self-efficacy. It's not about the course. It's about their understanding of what this career is. So we went around the country and we filmed groups of kids, mostly young women, who are doing computer science and education, computer science and health, computer science and design, computer science end. So it's not just computer science. And we got 90,000 students to go through our system before they were selecting what they were going to study in high school. And what did we saw? A nice increase in the number of boys who were going to study things that could allow them to study computer science later, and a dramatic increase in the number of girls who were doing this, about 25%. And what's the point here? The point here is that when we think about what people are doing, and of course what kids are doing, we need to think about what's holding people back and what are their motivations. In this particular case, the girls' motivation were to find something that has meaning. And unless you do something that shows the meaning, you're not going to get the right answer. One more quick study, we were asked by the government to get more people to show up for medical exams. This was before Corona. And the only thing we had to do was to play with the text, people getting a text reminder. Text reminder before we intervened said, hey, you have an appointment with this doctor at this hour. We try to add some motivation to that text. We need to add real motivation, just a little bit. Some people, we said, Dr. X is waiting for you, or Nurse Y is waiting for you. Your kids want you to be healthy. The health system will lose 200 shekels if you don't show up. Another citizen could use your appointment. We try all kinds of things in that little text message. What did we do? We reduced the number of no-shows. The number of people who did not show and did not notify they did not show was about 21% before we showed up. We reduced it to about 13% after we showed up. And what message worked the best? Another citizen in the country could use your appointment if you didn't show up, which of course was nice that we had some solidarity. Okay, so to summarize, what is the point? If you think about the last 200-300 years of human achievement, a lot of what we have done is to redesign our physical world in a better way. Superman used to fly, we couldn't, we invented planes. Superman could run very fast, we couldn't, we invented cars. Superman could sit for many hours or stand for many hours, we can't, we have chairs. We have everything that our physical ability was not allowing us to do. We design an environment to do. As a consequence, we live much longer and we have much more complex lives. Now the question is, what is the environment that we're designing cognitively? And we can assume that cognitively we're perfect. We can assume cognitively our kids are perfect. Or we can assume that we have some limitations. We can assume that it's hard to focus and concentrate. We don't deal well with distractions. We don't think very well on the long term. And the question is, what do we do? And I think that these two parts of how we as parents and as individuals design our own environment, or the environment of our kids, is crucial. How do we design for friction? so that the right behavior is the easiest? And what kind of incentives do we give? I don't mean pay kids, but what kind of motivations do we create? That I think is the challenge that we have. The good news is we're making some progress to it, but not enough. Final word. Kaima as an organization is working with the government, as you can imagine. Working with the government these days is more challenging and interesting. We have an NGO. We're always looking for people to participate and help. And if you're interested, just reach out and let us know, and we'll find a way to collaborate. So that's it for me. I wish you all, us all, a very good school year. Very good in the sense that we'll find ways to manage within this craziness and make the most out of it. And within this, be able to design our cognitive and physical environment for the best outcomes possible. All the best.